You are now tuning in live to Accelerate, a NoSQL original series brought to you by DataStax.
Et voici le dernier. Je dois maintenant ranger tout ça. Alors, les masses, je les mets ici. Il y en a vraiment trop là. Jamais je pourrais tout utiliser. Attends. Mais si j'ai essayé de les vendre?
Allô?
Allô, Cedrick?
Oui, c'est qui?
C'est Sophie. Dis-moi, j'aurais besoin d'un petit service. J'ai beaucoup de produits à vendre et je me dis que beaucoup de monde est dans le même cas. Il faudra faire une application où tout le monde pourrait vendre ou échanger ses affaires non utilisées. Qu'est-ce que tu en penses?
Oui, c'est une bonne idée. Ça peut vraiment intéresser beaucoup de gens à travers le monde. Ce serait une application disponible partout, qui devrait toujours rester online et qui générerait énormément de trafic. Je pense que ce qu'il te faut, c'est du Cassandra avec une API pour avoir à la fois des applications mobiles et un beau site internet.
Pardon? C'est qui cette Cassandra? J'aurais juste besoin de savoir si tu peux le faire. Et combien de temps ça prendra? Et surtout, combien ça va me coûter?
Oui, tu sais, tout le monde dit que Cassandra, c'est une technologie compliquée. Ça risque de coûter cher. Il me faudrait 1 mois pour te préparer une démo.
Je te donne 1 mois pour me construire une maquette. Et on se rappelle, ok?
Ok, ça marche. À bientôt, salut.
Salut!
Okay, let's get serious. You may have heard that Cassandra is hard. It is indeed different from a relational database, not hard. Let me show you by building a REST API from the beginning and step by step. Let's go.
When you create an application, the first things to do is to define your data model properly, and there is a methodology for that. The process is described with many details in DataStax Academy free courses, but here I will give you an overview. To start with, you will need both conceptual data model and application workflow. From there, it's all about applying basic rules to move to the physical data model. Let's see with a use case. In an e-commerce application, we have an entity product with attributes, an entity orders with some attributes. Both are related with a many-to-many relationship, eventually having properties. I will use this limited scope as a simplified conceptual data model. Second asset to provide for a good data model is application workflow. This is simply listing requests you need on each screen or moving from one screen to another. In our sample, first screen is all about displaying product overviews and sorting them with multiple criteria. Second will show customer product details. This is where they would add items to their carts. And third is the cart where customer checkout orders. If I move from mockup to queries, you can see that we can have multiple queries for screen number 1. That's it. We can now pause our brain. This is all about applying basic rules to get to the logical data model. Rule number 1. In my application there are 5 queries. So in my design I will have 5 tables. Rules number 2. For each table I locate the attribute to group results. This is my partition key. I store data in the best way to retrieve them fast. For the first table, category is the search criteria. I defined it as the partition key and list others attributes. I do the same for every tables. Rules number 3. Same as relational word, the primary key ensure unicity of records, but also help to sort the results. Close to my partition key, I mark other columns used either for sorting or ensuring unicity. Those are called clustering column and have ascending or descending flag. I use the JetBoco notation to make it visual, and I do the same for the remaining tables. Done! We do have our logical data model. Last step. To progress to the physical data model, I will simply add type for each column. It can be scalar, text, integers, UID block, or collections, set, list, map, or even custom-defined structures named UDT for user-defined type. And with that, we have now everything we need to create the CQL Cassandra query language table definitions. Data model is cleared. What about microservice? Well, let's start with the tables. To build a microservice, you will first create entities and related repositories implementing create, read, updates, and delete operations named CRUDs. Then you shape your business or bounding context. In our use case, we can use the screen. Some repositories can be immediately exposed as APIs. Others, like homepage, require a bit of mapping. Indeed, each time you edit a product, you need to update multiple tables. And boom, we have our microservice. APIs can be REST, GraphQL, or gRPC based on application constraints. Either it needed synchronous, asynchronous, or even reactive operations. This API can now be invoked by one or many user interfaces. Let's move to implementation. To connect to the database, this is a no-brainer. DataStax provides a set of drivers available in multiple languages, and here I will pick Java. Spring is a very popular framework in the Java community, if not the most. So here I will use some component from Spring to help us. Spring Data can help us defining objects, entities, and repositories. Spring Web, WebMVC, Spring Data REST, or Spring Web Flux help us to expose REST APIs, REST endpoints. And last but not least, Spring Boot is a lightweight runtime to execute our microservice everywhere, and especially in containers. Now, Spring Framework is part of the Pivotal company, and I have asked Mario Gray, developer advocate there, to tell us a bit more about what the Spring Framework can bring to developer. Let's go ask him. Hey, hello Mario, thank you for helping me. I need to create an application with Spring, and I heard you can help me. So could you please introduce yourself and what is your current position at VMware?
Thanks for reaching out, Cedrick. I work at the Modern Applications Business Unit at VMware. It's a newly acquired subsidiary of VMware. It used to be called Pivotal, but the role has not changed. My role is developer advocate, as to make sure and engage the Spring community, also the MapBoo community, the people using our Tanzu products and our Kubernetes products, such as VMC. We have tons of support for Spring and DataStax within the community that I'm aware of, and I'll find that whatever you need to look up for the community, you can find us on GitHub or Stack Overflow and Spring IO. Go to Spring Central. There's a plethora of resources, and I will help anybody, including you, Cedrick, especially you, Cedrick.
Mario, what would be your recommended path for me to start with Spring?
If I were to tell you, hey, you want to start a new Spring application, I would just point you in the direction of spring.io, which is a great resource for finding the documentation to Spring, as well as a lot of trails. In other words, a lot of tutorials and blog posts and resources from the developer community. The second thing is the Spring Initializer. If you're a Spring developer, then the Spring Initializer is really the place to go. It'll get you started on an application path very quickly. You don't have to mess with your Gradle or your POM file. It's got it all there for you. You tell it what to do, what type of application you want for Spring to launch for you, and it'll put together the build file. So it's more like a UMN. In any case, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that's very great. So, you speak about modules and components I can take from Spring. I will need to work with Apache Cassandra and create a REST API. So which are the tools I need for that?
It sounds like you have the idea of an application forming in your head right now. And what I would say right now is, for you to get started, what you're going to need to do is understand what your data model is, okay? And then figure out the best database. You probably are going to want to use Cassandra if you have a lot of like loggy or a lot of data that stands on its own that can be aggregated. One of the suggestions that I would use is to check out Spring Data REST, Cassandra, which lets you actually, which is a plugin for Spring that'll let you just use Cassandra pieces in a repository fashion. That is, you don't have to know too much about Cassandra right now. You can write queries that are very natural and very idiomatic towards the developer. That is, I write a method, and that method says find by ID, and that's exactly what it does. So basically, I don't have to go into the driver and ask the driver to execute a SQL or to execute a CQL statement and then fetch the results myself. This all happens behind the scenes using the Spring framework. So it's a very powerful tool. I would advise anybody to use it.
Sounds like it can save me a lot of time. Yes, indeed. So I simply have to create an object, an entity, and Spring Data will create for me the repository and the REST resources or using Spring Data REST. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Couple lines of code and I'm good to go. Yes.
A couple of lines of code is pretty much it.
All right. So for my app, I need Apache Cassandra, and seems like I also need a REST API. What are the Spring module I can use for those two capabilities?
What a lot of people tend to do is they'll go and say, hey, I have a module that needs to connect to a terabyte of Cassandra data that needs to be run on Spark or whatever. And what they'll do is they're going to want to query the data. Usually they want to query the data and do light writing, and I'll probably just point them in the direction of Spring Data Cassandra. In other words, start.spring.io offers the modules for connecting to Cassandra out of the box, and the one that you would normally select is called Spring Data Cassandra, and that'll get you the ability to test and to run it as a regular production workload. But there's another way to engage Cassandra that is taking the scene by storm right now, and it's called the Reactive Revolution. And we also, if you are interested, we also support a reactive extension for accessing data in Cassandra reactively. So in other words, our repositories, which are natural language or close to idiomatic language repositories like find by ID, they have their counterparts in the reactive world as well, where they return reactive streams rather than standard data types. So the power there is twofold. You have a imperative workload or a reactive workload. We're ready for you at either stage. The Spring framework out of the gate, WebFlux or WebMVC. WebFlux is the reactive web web framework for deriving RESTful applications, and then the old WebMVC. You can still drive RESTful applications from there as well. It's you can pick and choose how you like to engage with a programming model.
Wow, there is a lot of stuff here. So I can start building my small object, which is kind of my table. And then Spring Data will give me CRUD operations, and Spring Data REST, Spring Flux, and Spring MVC, as you said, is all about exposing as an API like that. I don't have to code it myself.
Correct. Yeah, there's even Spring Data REST, which brings it even closer. That is, your data methods can also become RESTful endpoints, which is something that's an extreme convenience case. Things for messaging consoles and really quick snap this together type of applications. Yeah. But yes, you're 100% correct. It's extremely easy and there's a vibrant community out there.
Well, very nice. Thank you very much. I think I will go and check this Spring.io right away. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Wow, so Spring is very powerful. What if I call Julien Dubois? He actually created a framework on top of Spring. Let's call him. Hey, hi Julien.
Hi Cedrick.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
Good. I do have Sophie that called me, and she would like me to build a project, a microservice, an API. And I know that you have a framework called JHipster that could help me. So I would like to do a demo and see how it works. But let's start by the beginning. Could you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, thanks Cedrick. So I'm Julien Dubois. I work at Microsoft as a developer advocate. And I'm also the author of a framework called JHipster that many people know. And it's a code generator for Spring Boot applications. And it generates, in particular, Cassandra database tables. So I think that might be useful for you.
Yes, indeed. Of course, Cassandra is the database I will use for my project. I've also explained to people what is Spring and how Spring data can bring to my app. And I would like you to explain what JHipster can bring on top of, Spring Data, Spring Boot.
Oh, yeah. So basically, you're going to be able to describe the application you want. We've got our own domain language. And so you will say, okay, I would like this data table, this other data table. And JHipster is going to generate for you, well, both the database tables, the SQL to generate the tables, but also the Spring Boot code on top of it. And if you want to go further, it also generates for you the front end. You can generate an Angular or React application on top of it.
No, that's very nice because, that would be a cosmetic app. And I think that I need a proper and nice and bright UI. So yes, connecting to the database, providing the tables and creating all the schema, having Spring Data all set up, ready to go, the REST API also ready to go, and I can interact with the web UI and interact with the web API using the documentation. Seems very, very good. Is there any tool around the application have been generated?
So we provide many different tools. There's a web view that you can use to describe your app. We've got some IDE plugin also if you want to. If you want to start easy, I would recommend that you start with something called start.jhipster.tech. So it's our own web app. And on start.jhipster.tech, you can describe your app. You will have a graphical view of it. And it will even be able to generate pull requests to your application if it's on GitHub or GitLab. So it will update your application automatically.
Nice. So I don't have to install JHipster on my laptop. There is a web-based and also web tools to do it for me. That seems very good. So now imagine that I do have my app running. Is there anything to help me to deploy the app, like Docker support or anything like that?
Oh, yes. We only spoke about the application, but JHipster is a full stack framework, and it also generates for you the infrastructure. So it's going to generate for you Docker Compose files. So you can have, you will have Cassandra up and ready with Docker. It's going to generate a lot of configuration and infrastructure file to help you throughout the life cycle of your project. It's not just generating the code, it's also generating infrastructure for you.
Very nice, very nice. So now I really want to test that. Thank you. All right. I have installed JHipster 6.9.1 using npm install. Let's see what it can do. First things to do is to create a folder, and let's see what JHipster can do for us. All right, see, it's starting. Oh, first question, which type of application would you like to create? Monolithic is fine, I don't need one runtime per service. I will get the single backend for now. Do you need reactive? No, it's simply CRUD for now. What is the name of your application? Cosmetics. What is your default Java package? com.cosmetics, I like that. Do you want to use JHipster registry? No, I will stay everything in my app. Oh, I can also have authentication ready to go. HTTP session is the one I'm most familiar with. Database, of course, no-brainer. Let's pick Cassandra. Do you want to use any cache? Well, Cassandra is famous to be fast for read and write. I don't need any cache. And I'm quite used to Maven to build my project. Okay, what other technologies would you like to use? WebSocket? No, I don't need push notification for now. Async? CRUD is fine, no Kafka. API first? No, I do have my queries. I will stick to my queries. Which framework we would like to use for the client? Angular. I also can pick some of my bootwatch stem coming from Bootstrap 4. So let's pick Darkly and use Dark. International support, yes. First French and second English. And I could add language later on when I got some success. I don't need any performance test for now. Would you like to install other generators from Marketplace? Oh, Themes, there is a Marketplace where you can have some add-ons. I don't need them for now. And boom, it's starting. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, after a few minutes, my application is now generated. Congratulations. I've imported the application in Eclipse. As you can see, no compilation error. It's built with Maven. And I even have some Docker files to be able to run Cassandra locally because I picked Cassandra database. Nice. But the application is empty. I should define my own entities. So based on the requirements, Julien created me this file using GDL Studio where I do have my tables related to my queries, and I will simply download this file and copy in my folder. So the file is called JHipster Cosmetic GDL, and I will ask JHipster to import those entities into my project. Okay, as you can see, two containers have been starting. First is Cassandra, second is migration, probably to import the entities I've just created. So let's see what's in Cassandra. With a little magic of CQLSH, I can have a list of key spaces, and I can see that I do have a key space named Cosmetics. And if I look at the tables, well, I do have my tables related to entities, but I also have some pre-baked tables related to users, probably to handle authentication and authorization. It seems like I do have everything I need to start my app, so let's go. To start the application, I simply did npm start for the front end and Maven for the back end. So now we can see the application is running at 8080. So let's see what we have. So, oh wow, so we do have a main page and we can switch to English. This is what we ask. We can also log in using admin, which is a default user. So user authentication also working. On the administration part, I see that I do have user management, metric, else, configuration log, and APIs ready to go. If I pick user management, this is user admin and system created for me. Here is all the Spring Boot actuators samples, and on the API part, I do have a full working REST API for each entity. Account, this is the default one for users. Product by category, one of my table. Product by city, and so forth and so on. Nice! So I do have the REST API. But not only that, I also have a dedicated screen per entity to create items. So nothing there, but if I want to create a new product, let's say 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, /tmp/pix.jpg, name sample product, price, entity, and I save my entity. See, I can simply add a new entity in there and I can edit back then. It's a full CRUD UI ready to go for you. So JHipster has been generated a full working app providing authentication, administration, REST API, and CRUD UI. And I didn't do anything except import entities and answering questions. Alright, so I've just finished building my app. I just clicked the button and it's working. I will deliver that to Sophie. She would be very happy about that, and I will be rich very soon. Thank you very much. It's an open source framework. How can we help you to build the framework and the community?
Yeah, so JHipster is fully open source. There is no enterprise version. It's a tool made by the community. So we created, in fact, an association. So it's a non-profit association to manage JHipster. And if you want to join us, well, you can just come and code with us. It's, of course, totally open and free. We're usually very welcoming with everybody. And if you want to go the next step, we also have a sponsorship system where companies can sponsor JHipster, and then we give that money back to our contributors in form of bug bounties.
Again, Julien, thank you very much for your help and also for your framework. And for everybody watching the video, if you like the demo, please go to jhipster.tech and try it.
Hey, ça fait un moment que j'ai pas eu de ces nouvelles. Et si je l'appelais?
Allô Cédric?
Que je viens aux nouvelles. Alors le business?
Écoute, les affaires vont bien, le service fonctionne tout seul, tout le monde vend ses affaires, je prends ma commission au passage.
Parfait. Écoute, je suis heureux de l'apprendre. Je voudrais te parler de mon paiement.
Ton paiement? Mais tu m'as livré l'application le lendemain ou presque. Ça n'a finalement pu te prendre que quelques minutes. Je ne vais pas te payer juste pour quelques heures. On se fait un resto la prochaine fois, ok?
Allô? Ah, je crois que la prochaine fois, je ferai comme tout le monde. Je dirais que Cassandra, c'est dur. Au moins pour être payé.
Also, may the stacks be with you.